Okay, so welcome everyone to the Customer Service Program CS Strategy Show and Tell. And let me share my screen first. So, yep, this show and tell will reveal what we have did as a team for the past month. And please let me know if you have any questions, any concerns, any issues regarding on anything inside this show and tell. Yep. So for this show and tell, we're discovering what our team did for the past month, and the spring goal include for child employment. It'll be on two major things, which is chaperone and also notice of concern. So for chaperone, we focus on delivering the chaperone handbook MVP and to enhance the chaperone application for live testing and user feedback. So this is mainly to really provide the guidance on how the user is going to use the system such that they'll know, they will understand how they can actually use the system, and then providing real guidance for them and to improve our service in between as well. And also for notice of concern, it'll be like collaborating on developing relevant questions for the notice of concern form, which the form is to allow the public to report anything that they feel concerning regarding on child employment, such that ensuring effective data capture for investigations. And we also as well progress usability testing planning and also consider recruitment on the user research. And another aspect is on the housing satisfaction survey, which is to focus on the tenancy breaches and as well to create a playbook that helps the housing team design and publish effective satisfaction survey so that they can improve service attendance. So moving on, I'll hand over to my team. And first will be child employment, which is on the chaperone license application. I think Chris is on you.
Yeah, this is me. So could we have the next slide, please, Jerry? Thank you. So something we're trying to do at the moment is demonstrate that user research is more than just a set of independent or isolated research sessions where we just gather our data and then move on. What we're working towards instead is having user research as a process of continual dialogue and engagement where we build good, productive relationships over time with users who help us out. And that includes keeping in touch with people regularly to check in and see how they're doing and get their feedback on the latest projects. So, as an example of this, we recently reached out to a chaperone who took part in a co-design workshop for a new chaperone handbook in October. They reviewed and drafted that handbook in January, and then recently offered some thoughts about a feedback survey for the chaperone license application in March. And we asked her what working with Birmingham City Council and user research meant to her. And this is what she had to say. So, Jerry, if you could play the video, please.
Yep, I'm trying to.
Thanks, Cherry. So yeah, we just thought that video was a nice, quick way of showing what engagement meant and what in citizens and residents' eyes they feel like good kind of user research and council work should be. So that's it. Just a quick update from Child Employment now. So pass over to Notice of Concern, which I think is Aisha.
And quit it. Jeez. Except it'll be on the Notice of Concern. Aisha?
Brilliant. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Cherry. One of the things, as well as applying to be a chaperone, the other child employment journey we're working on is Notice of Concern. So over the past couple of weeks, we've been engaging with stakeholders such as the legal team and the corporate safeguarding team. So I just wanted to play back some of the learnings that we have around that. So I guess one of the key learnings initially was actually inviting feedback in a way that suits stakeholders. So sort of going into this project, it was sort of mid-flight when we all joined. So the form had already been created on Figma. So we did start sort of iterating the form, the questions, the content on Figma. And we realised that in some cases, some stakeholders had some access issues with it. And it also took a really long time to then iterate or change specific words within Figma. So we then decided to use a familiar tool, Word, to invite feedback and to track changes. So it really showed the importance of using tools and communication methods that stakeholders also use as well. So on reflection, using Word for agreeing and signing off content or questions before then putting it onto Figma would have been more efficient, and it's something that we're sort of taking away sort of going forward. The other thing was around engaging with stakeholders early and often. So for us, it would have been really beneficial to get legal, safeguarding, the service area all in the same call nearer the start of the process. So they all actually felt really part of the journey to really co-develop the form from the very beginning. So bringing stakeholders up to speed with the process has been, I guess, part of the journey that we're going through at the moment, really recognising that they might be working on different things, they might have only been partly engaged before we joined, and actually sort of going in as though they're a layperson and almost approaching them and showing them the journey so far, but also why their feedback is really matters and really valued. And then finally, and something that I think is always important to go back to, is rooting it back to user needs. And that's not just users being the end users experiencing the service. It's actually also those users such as staff who then be using the information from the Notice of Concern to progress or investigate that concern as well. So there's actually been multiple iterations of the form guidance and questions when we had actually picked up the work. So for us, it's almost important to go back to what's already been agreed, being really open to challenge and change the form if it doesn't necessarily meet user needs. And I'm now going to hand over to Oliver, who's going to be speaking a little bit about some of the changes that we've made based on those user needs.
Thanks, Aisha. Yeah, hi everyone. So I just cut off a small part from the form, which is about describe previous and current concern. So on the left hand, we've got some questions which was on the previous version. So we asked them like what your concern relate to, and they have to answer the questions about the child, organization, or chaperone. Then they will be navigate to the page where they describe their previous concern if they have one, and describe the current concern. Then we have this kind of engagement meeting with relevant teams like surveys, legal safeguarding team. We got some quite valuable feedback from them, like the current concern is much more important because it's gonna be useful for them to have immediate action or investigation, and also from us as a service designer, standing on the shoe of the customer, we find that we have too much screens for them to go through. So we also have this kind of discussion about the value of the questions, which is redundant, useless, which we should kind of add in. So after those iteration, we've got our kind of refined version. So currently we will ask the customer the question about their current concern directly, including the child, organization, chaperone, according to the concern they had. And then the next page will be ask them to provide further details about their concern. Then after that, they're gonna kind of give us some details about the action they have taken so far, including the previous concern details if they have. So I have to say, compared to the number of the questions, definitely we make the form shorter and also easy for staff to capture the useful information. And that's all from me.
Thank you, Oliver. Next one, Grace, for the notice of concern user research.
Yeah, thanks, Cherry. So yeah, I'm just going to talk a bit about the user research which we'll be doing for notice of concern later this year, and that's going to take the form of some scenario-based usability testing. So why are we doing this? Well, quite simply, we need to check that the form works for users. At the first instance, this means the people who will be actually completing the form themselves, so the people who identify a cause of concern and then report it. However, because of the nature of notice of concern, we also need to help ensure that the form will work for the potentially vulnerable children who the process is designed to safeguard. So our aims are to test that the form is as user-friendly and thorough as possible. We want to make sure that everything is accessible, clear, and easy to navigate. We aim to check that the form provides enough information and to work out where we might need to give more. Finally, we want to make sure that the form is asking the right kind of questions and collecting the right kind of details. In short, basically, we want to test what works well and what might need some further attention. So to do this, we have an engagement and recruitment plan with a few different aspects. Because the form can be completed by professionals or members of the public, because it asks for the background of whoever's completing it, we want to engage people from those two different groups. So we'll be using the usual channels to try to recruit members of the public, so sending out on mailing lists, using internal communications, using Twitter, and other things like that. But we'll also be using more targeted recruitment for the professionals who would like to test the form. So, for instance, there are some chaperones who have worked with us before in different parts of user research, who we think would give some really good insights because of their professional background. And also across the TSP team, we have contacts who should give us access to educational and medical contexts. So across those various channels, we hope to build a good pool of potential users who can test the system to help make sure that it's robust and fit for purpose. Well, that's the whys and the whos, so now the what. And this is where we had to think a bit creatively. The notice of concern form is quite complex with lots of different branching options. It's also potentially a sensitive subject, and we just needed to be mindful of any possible distress that the form may cause. Finally, the form itself asks for lots of details, such as the name of any businesses involved, and we had to find a way to get all the different parts of the form populated. We couldn't just invite someone to a research session and ask them to complete the form with no background information. So you'll often hear or read that user research is a team sport, and for us, that meant drawing inspiration from the work of colleagues. In the voice automation project, Donna ran some really interesting, really effective research involving scenarios where the participant would be asked to put themselves in the shoes of a fictional person who had to phone the council to sort out a certain problem. Given how well that worked, we adapted that method, and Grace has written loads of scenarios which will ask people to put themselves in someone else's shoes and complete the form based on the information provided, including those details like the business names, the background of the person completing the form, whether they knew the child, whether they submitted a notice of concern form before, and so on. So, for example, on the slide here, we see Mr. Jones spotting a boy working in the garage when he should probably be in school, and Stacey, the chaperone, observing possible bad practice in the theatre. So in our research sessions, the users will complete the form as if they were Mr. Jones or Stacey or any one of the other scenario characters that Grace has come up with. So writing these scenarios was a bit of a balancing act between giving enough information while remaining concise and not holding the participants' hand all the way through the process. We wanted to give people the information necessary for completing the form without telling people how to do so. We also wanted to make sure that all the major branches in the Note of Concern journey were covered, and the scenarios which Grace has put together, I think, tick all those boxes. So our next steps will be beginning recruitment and starting to organise the research session over the next couple of months. And then we can start getting some results, analysing those, and producing insights which we can act on to help improve the form. So that's about it from Notes of Concern. So I'll pass it over to Greg to talk about housing. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so just on behalf of Donna, user researcher, myself and the rest of the team, we just wanted to talk about some of the work we've been doing with the housing team on some tenant satisfaction surveys and an example of where work hasn't gone to plan and some of the learnings that we found from that. So if you go to the next slide, please, Cherry. Yeah, so we'd previously worked with the housing team on an antisocial behaviour survey, so allowing people who'd been through the antisocial behaviour kind of process with the housing team to feedback on their experiences so the housing team can improve their services. So we want to do similar around tenancy breaches, so working with them to develop a feedback mechanism. And to do that, we had involvement from service design around mapping out the as-is and to-be journeys, user research interviews with residents, some affinity mapping and persona creation off the back of those interviews, and then actually starting to write the content and the questions for the survey. If we could get to the next slide, Cherry. We then found out sort of close to approaching build that the housing team decided to put the work on hold and to kind of reassess things. Essentially, the sort of tenancy breaches, when they're initiated, they're anonymous, so there were no contact details to actually pass the feedback survey onto, and due to that, the trigger point couldn't be identified. So the work was put on hold. Obviously, lots of frustration within the team and some disappointment as well because of all the work we'd put into it. But we kind of used our retro sessions at the end of that sprint to kind of feed some of this back and share our thoughts. And our delivery manager, Cherry, was brilliant at getting some time in the diary with the service area lead. So we were able to have an honest conversation around what had happened, discuss kind of next steps and also some of the learnings from what had happened and how we can take that forward into future projects. Next slide, Cherry. So in terms of what we learned from this experience, that the right people need to be in the room when discussing things like trigger points. If we'd have had the right people in the room earlier on, we would have discovered that issue a lot earlier. Things aren't always in your control and things will not always go according to plan. It's okay to be frustrated, but yeah, it's no use just moaning about it. You need to actually do something with that frustration and learn from it and channel it into your improvement work for future projects. I think we learned the importance of the retros as well and that they're a safe space. I think as we spend more time as a team and grow as a team, you know, we do feel like those retros are a safe space to give our honest thoughts on things. So it was really useful having that session to vent those frustrations and discuss some of the learnings, but also building the relationship with the service area as well. We've really enjoyed working with the housing team on the previous things we did around antisocial behaviour. So that, you know, that kind of work isn't wasted. We've got that relationship for future projects as well to build on. Next slide, please, Cherry. Thank you. So yeah, I just wanted to end on some positives really from it. So yeah, the fact that the service area found kind of a real benefit from working with us is really positive, and they do want to work with us again in the future. The work on those survey questions that we did do also fed into the antisocial behaviour survey, which was kind of running concurrently. So in a sense, you know, the work we did do on tenancy breaches, it did kind of factor into the other survey, so not completely wasted work in that sense, because we were having these conversations that applied to both. So that was still really useful stuff that we got from those sessions. We're also working on a playbook as well, so a series of guidance for the housing team on how they can kind of design, plan, build surveys in the future. So what we've learned from some of the failures, I guess, with the tenancy breaches, we've been able to factor that into the guidance and the playbook. So we've used those learnings to kind of iterate on that guidance to share with the service. That's in progress at the moment. So maybe in the future show and tell, we can show some of that playbook and show you what we've done in that space as well. I think that's everything from me. So back to Cherry.
Thank you, Greg. So just wondering if anyone have any questions regarding on what we have shown you guys. Apologies, I can't really see if anyone having their hands up. Any?
Sorry, my touchpad stopped working, so simple actions are harder than they should be at the moment, like raising a hand or unmuting yourself. I wondered about the bit right at the end about making a guide for survey questions and a playbook, whether you're talking about our playbook and referring people to that or a separate one, and whether you are putting together a separate survey writing guide, because it would be, we do have a pretty solid draft one that I know Chris and Grace are aware of. I'd rather that we had one survey writing guide than make bespoke ones for different teams.
Yeah, so this originally, Annie, was just intended to be a guide for the housing satisfaction surveys, but I did factor in some of the information you shared last time, which I believe has gone into the playbook, the sort of general playbook. So yeah, I mean, we could potentially link out to the general survey playbook from ours, or yeah, we can merge the two potentially, see if there's anything we want to take from ours and add to the main one. I know Shiraz's got his hand up, so he might have some suggestions as well.
I think you covered off some of those options for me, Greg, to be honest with you. So Annie, the playbook is a customer program activity, and we have created the customer satisfaction playbook for housing, but taking a generic approach to it, so it's a reusable playbook that we can do. So didn't have an understanding or any insight of a more generic one that had been created. So happy if you could share that with us as well, and then we can look at options on how we get to one.
Great, yeah. Myself and comms and public participation have worked on a survey guidance and draft, governance and writing. So the writing one's in pretty decent shape. The governance is still coming together. But yeah, I know that Grace and Chris have got a copy, so feel free to share it with everyone. And then, so you've got a customer satisfaction playbook for housing or for customer program?
It's for housing.
Cool. So you're just making them some like bespoke stuff.
It's supposed to be these generic guidelines, I mean. So although it was around tenant satisfaction, I think looking at it, and I think Greg has had a view of both, it was around those guiding principles. So, you know, the things that you need to consider when doing a survey. So I think, as Greg and Shiraz says, there is mileage in looking at, you know, how we can get to the one rather than having multiple iterations and versions of things floating around and have a corporate stance on it.
Great.
Cherry, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Annie. Just
Okay.
wondering if anyone has any other questions. If not, then I shall give everyone back half an hour. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to find anyone in our team or message me or leave it in the chat message. Yep. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Cherry. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
Thanks, everyone.
everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks, everyone.
everybody.
Have a
Bye.
nice day.